Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sheri.
And together we are
the Traveling Professors.
Welcome to show number 111 of the Traveling Professors. Today, Sheri and I are going to take you on a tour of the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. Now, this is a museum that was founded in 1829, and subsequently various collections were moved to different expositions locations until 1858. The current location of the building was proposed and the construction of the museum began in 1866 and was completed in 1889 using funds from the Greek government and the Greek Archaeological Society and the Society of Mycenae. Now, inside of this museum is the spectacular collection of gold objects found by Schliemann at Mycenae. The south wing of the building houses an epigraphic museum that is the world's richest collection of inscriptions, and it was last expanded and modernized and reopened in July of 2004, just in time for the Athens Olympics. Well, for once, our trusty map of Athens is not going to work for us because the Archaeological Museum is way off the top of the screen here. So the first time we went down to the metro station and took the metro to the Mostraki and then changed trains and then went up to an area for the next stop closest to the Archaeological Museum. Well, that worked out okay, except we walk out on the wrong street, and all the street names are in Greek. So we walked about 3 blocks before we figured we were going the wrong direction, and then went back. And that is also the same way that we went back the first time. The second time Sheri and I went to the museum was in 2019 into 2020. And that time, we took the double-decker bus. So here is the double-decker bus route. And of course, it was right across the street from our hotel. So we took it up and it stops right by the museum. So we just went off there, went in and visited the museum, got back on, and then drove around the rest of the city. So if you're going to want to take a tour with the double-decker bus, at least the red line, and see where everything is, this is a good time to go and see the museum. Now, when we were there the first time, before we went to the museum, we went to the McDonald's that I've talked about. So that's that area right in here. And there's the interior. And this is what the Greek Big Mac looked like at the time. And then we go back towards the Parliament building, go down into the metro. So here we are standing waiting for the metro. So here we are on this beautiful, beautiful metro line. And so in the end, we head to that location a couple of blocks away from the museum. And that's where we'll start. So here we are coming into the museum area. There's 2 restaurants that are still there. The last time we were there was in the winter. And so we were indoors. And then here's a view of the main front of the museum. It's really beautiful. And it's really funny because when you think about Greece and, for example, World War II, in World War II, the museum was not just closed, but all the antiquities were sealed in special protective boxes and buried to keep them from being destroyed or looted. And then they were finally put back on exhibit at the end of 1945. So here is a map of the layout of the ground floor. And what we did, we came in the front, and then we went around this direction, and then went down this hallway, and then went upstairs. And upstairs is where you have the special collections and other things. They've added new material. As you can see, there's the Egyptian collection that's up there. There's other collections as well. And we went back down, went around the other side, which is all sculptures, and then we went back into the middle. Okay, well, in the middle, this section here, as you can see, is the prehistoric collection, the Mycenaean antiquities, the Neolithic antiquities, and the early and middle Bronze Age, as well as the cyclotic art. And this is basically a gigantic vault. So when you walk out the doors and they seal it at night, this is like a huge vault because this is where all the gold is. And I would suggest that if you're in Athens and you don't want to spend a lot of time looking at the museum, it is worth going here to see all of the gold that was found by Schliemann at Mycenae. As we start into the room with all the sculptures and the bronze, as we come to these kyros, which are the giant male and female statues that you found in early Greece on the islands. I believe the largest one is in the museum at Samos. So we get a nice little look at the 2 of them. There's the female, the male and the female. Heading into the next room when we can see this beautiful bronze of Poseidon. And here's a couple of different views of it. And here, of course, is the view that got me in trouble. That is known as posing, but we got yelled at. You're not supposed to pose with the statues. Then after being chastised, we head into the next room, and a lot of these sculptures that you see are urns with burials in them. And a lot of the monuments that you'll see in this next room are also statues that were associated with, or plaques that were associated with people's burials. Here we have one which has a harpy standing next to it. And then here's another harpy, and you see this other object with its cauldron on top. And then here we have a family picture here, and frequently the deceased is seated with his relatives standing in front or around him. In the earlier days, would have been on a bed, with a burial bed, and the family would be at the foot of the bed, and he would be sitting up talking to you. Here we have a magnificent monument to a horse, and then here is this beautiful bronze. You get to see both sides of it. And we hand into the next room. We're heading into that area. And then we have a cherub-like figure and a goddess being tempted. And then we get a nice little bronze of Augustus. And then as we're heading out of this room, we come to the hermaphrodite. You have them sleeping in this, and here's one side, and here's the other very front part. Very popular style in Greek and even Roman carvings. And then we come into a room where the sculptures kind of come to an end along with the bronzes, and if we were to go further on the one side, that would take you into where all the codexes and things are. But this is also the room that leads you up to the next level, and it has this stunning bronze horse with the rider on it, and you can see the size of it with the person standing next to it. So I went around and took different views of it to get different aspects of just how magnificent it was to produce this object. And then here's from the very back, and then behind this is Aphrodite. So we get some different views of Aphrodite here: front, left, close up, and of course her backside. And then we head down the hallway, and this is the flight of stairs that leads us up to the special exhibits. As we finished looking at the bronzes, there was this long hallway, and they had the steps, and there was a special exhibit. And the exhibit that they had when we were there the first time was the Antikythera shipwreck. So we went upstairs to see what was there. So here is one of the planks from the ship that has been preserved with the nails used to hold the ship together. Look at the size of these. I call them nails, but they're extremely large to hold everything together. But this ship was full of bronze pieces. It's not uncommon for a bronze statue when it breaks that if they couldn't fix it, they would sell it for scrap and haul it to another place, melt it down, make a new statue. There were also full-size statues. So here we have this beautiful male statue, front and back side. There were smaller objects. Here's some of the smaller statues that were found in it. There was also glassware. Look at this stunning glass, intact. And then they had some marble statues. Now the marble statues are interesting because if the object was on its side, the side that was in the mud was perfectly fine, as you see with this one statue here on the left-hand side. He's fine. But the side that was exposed into the water, that then gets barnacled and deteriorates. And you would see that in all the different statues that they had. Here's one where just part of it, the leg was out, and a couple of other pieces. And you would see how that deteriorated. But it also had the piece of the famous Antikytherian mechanism that's been the discussion of all sorts of things. It's believed to have been part of a clock that was used to determine the various games, because the Greeks held 4 games, the Olympics being the most important, but there were 3 others. They would all have their time in the calendar so you could keep track of it. So here's some of the metal parts that you can see, and then this is a closer view. They also had a holographic view of what this would have looked like cleaned, but that I could not take a picture of. So that was the special exhibit the first time we were there. The second time it was on the different types of clothing from around Greece. So after we finished upstairs, we went downstairs and began our journey to the Schliemann treasure. Before we go into the area which is the vault where all of the gold is kept, need a little background with Heinrich Schliemann. Born in 1822, lived to 1890, was a rich German industrialist, multi-billionaire by all practical purposes with today's money, and the time of he was 45 years of age and bored to death. He studied all sorts of different languages and thought that archaeology would be fun to do. and he had always been fascinated by the Iliad and the Odyssey. So his first endeavor was to try and prove that there was a Troy, find it, excavate it, and do other things associated with it. So he does excavate what is ultimately Troy. And then he also excavates Tiran, which is the home of Hercules, and Mycenae. And it's at Mycenae where he discovered the tombs. Now here we have a drawing of the area of the Mycenae excavation. And the area where they found the graves is in that circle region. And he excavated down and found X number of shafts with a body. Now this is one of the problems that we have with Schliemann. This is the beginning of archaeology. So as they got down to the bottom of the shafts, each of the bodies was covered with a gold mask. He lifts them off carefully, and all of them begin to disintegrate immediately. Today, I'm not sure there's anything else that could have been done, but instead of stopping and trying something else, he continued to do that. And finally, he got to the last one and lifted the mask, and in a telegram to the king of Greece said, "I have gazed upon the face of Agamemnon." Then, of course, it disintegrated. They moved all of the gold to Athens for safekeeping. Most of the museums of archaeological sites, they keep the stuff at the site, such as in Delphi, where the objects were actually intended to stay. Now we come to the special section. This is where the treasure of Mycenae is located. So as you come in, you see this case, and it's two-sided. At the top, you see two of these heads. Those were over the faces of the burials at Mycenae. And then there's other items associated with those burials. Here's a close-up of one of the heads. And this idea of using gold on the face of the deceased is typical in the Mycenaean period of Greece, because you'll find if you go up to Pella, or if you look at my Pella museum show that I have, you'll see that they did that for nobles as well in the north. And here's the most famous one. This happens to be what they refer to as Agamemnon. This was the last of the gold masks that was taken off of the body. The idea of size in a cleaning period, they do these every so often. Here is one of actually it's Agamemnon's mask being held by one of the archaeologists. And then here's the other side of the case where we have three more of the faces as well as some of the swords. So here's some of the others. You'll find these on various books on ancient Greece, particularly on Mycenae. Here's one that's a little bit more flattened out. And this is probably the most crude of all of them. But then within those shafts were all sorts of objects. So here is a display of some of the Mycenaean weapons. Extremely large swords. You, of course, had spearheads. Here's a closer view of these. The handles would have been wrapped with leather. And then here we have the center of the case, one of the, see how iron deteriorates, now the gold handle. Then here's another case showing not only swords, but some more spears. Here's a little closer view of some of the swords with the gold handles. Now, gold is great for looks. Their handle could not be solid gold if you're going to use that in battle. It's way too soft. It would just break. But you could put a gold covering over the iron tang or bronze tang that the sword was made on. Look at the dagger. Gold handle, panthers or lions on the top of it. Then we come to displays of all kinds of smaller gold objects that were in the tomb. Here we have one of the necklaces. And then here we have a display of the various drinking vessels. Here's a close-up. See the different styles of cups. On the other side, there's another display. These magnificent gold drinking cups and goblets. Here's a close-up of the one in the middle. And then here are two, probably the finest gold drinking cups of the whole collection. There's one side. Here's the other. There's another display. That's another one of the gold vessels. And then here we have where they have, there's the panther rhyton. There's the bull, very typical of the Minoans. Some alabaster items, some bronze items. There was some cookware in a display. And they also have a display of potteryware as well. So the collection in that central area with the Schliemann gold and the treasures from the other islands, from Santorini and other islands, is really just incredible and is worth the trip to the museum all by itself. Well, after touring the Museum of Archaeology in Athens, we were tired. Their courtyard has this beautiful little bistro restaurant in there that you can get something to eat. So here we are sitting on the outside porch, and here's the view view of the garden on the inside, and they have some artifacts out there as well. Here's an example of one of the objects of art that's out in the courtyard. So it's a nice little place to get a respite. You can either relax at the end like we did or halfway through. It's a nice location. Sheri and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyacordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.